You guys take shekels? Just got back from a trip to Israel. All I got is a fistful of shekels. 57.33. That was a pretty good year for me. Shabbat shalom, motherfuckers!
Right, ladies and gentlemen, as a notorious anti-Semite, I'm exceptionally excited to be sat here today with Rafi Farber. How are you doing, Rafi?
I'm doing very well. Very happy to be on a show with an anti-Semite like you. Really excited.
Well, this is it. Like, I'm keen to see if there is even a definition for this word, and whether it applies to me. And that is why I spoke to Joseph, because I was accused of it, and I want to get to the bottom of this. And I discovered you on Unity News Network around the same time that I spoke to Joseph, and it was such perfect timing because I can't find. I can find very little that I disagree with you on. And this even goes quite deep theologically as well. I think when we get right down to the root of it, we might have a disagreement, but I think we agree on the moral state of the world right now. So I'm really interested in this. What was your perspective on Joseph Cohen and everything that happened there?
Oh, okay. So I have a lot to say here. I'm going to try to cut it down to just a few minutes. I don't want to take all your time, but I have a lot to say about people like Joseph Cohen, and really, like, I don't want to mince words. People like him make me sick. He's a Jew and he's my family, and I love him in that way. But like, when you're pissed off at your family for being assholes, you can get really mad at them. So look, it's like this. Like, people like him, they make careers out of the Holocaust, okay? And they try to shut down what they call Holocaust denial, or look for anti-Semites or people that just don't like Jews and try to sweep them out from under the rug and say, look, there's one, go attack him and blah, 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 and make a, rah-rah, sis, boom, bah about it. And that's their living. So if they can't find it, it's like why does the Simon Wiesenthal Center exist? Why do Nazi hunters still exist? I mean, there's no more Nazis to hunt. Why does the Anti-Defamation League exist? And they are horrible, horrible people. I mean, all they pretty much want to do is shut down free speech now, which is, which leads to Holocaust type situations, and mass formation psychoses was coined by what was that, Matthias Dessman, who coined that term, right? And I think Robert Malone also went on about it. But what Joseph Cohen is trying to do is, look, there's really two kinds of Holocaust denial, right? There's the Holocaust denial that people say it never happened. Hitler loved the Jews, and they had tea together, and everything was fine, and nobody was killed in Germany, and that's just all a lie. Okay, so that's ridiculous. And then there are the much worse Holocaust deniers that say, basically, they make a religion out of this event that happened between 1939 and 1945, and they say this is the Holocaust, and it is this holy orb that cannot be touched. So if anyone ever says anything like what is happening now, it has any similarity to the Holocaust whatsoever, you have been ejected from this religion, and we are going to shame you, and you can never ever say that it can ever happen again. But then what is the point? What is the point of learning about the Holocaust? What is the point of learning about these events if you cannot say that what is happening, if the point is to prevent it from happening again? In order to prevent something from happening again, you have to be able to compare it to the present. If you say that it's usher, that you cannot compare what happened then to the present, that there's no similarity, then you are enabling the Holocaust to happen again. That's exactly what you're doing, and that is Holocaust denial. That's the much worse kind of Holocaust denial, much less cartoonish than saying Hitler and the Jews were best friends. It's ridiculous. And so one analogy about what Joseph Cohen is doing, right? So there's a reason to dislike Jews when they are not behaving as they should, because just aesthetically, it's annoying that there are these people on this planet that claim to descend from the people of the Bible, and they have all these customs, and nobody can seem to get rid of them. And all of Western society stems from them in some way. The Christians, the Muslims, the Baha'i, and everyone down that line, they all come from us. At least I claim that. And it can be annoying as a Christian who purports to be the new Israel, and that the Jews were rejected, that look, we're still here and you just can't get rid of us. So it's annoying. I'm fine with that. So when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, setting a moral example for the world, people, even if people resent Jews, they can say, oh, look, they're doing the right thing. That I can respect that. But when we're not, it's like there's a house on the block, right? It's called the Jew house, and it's supposed to be this amazing mansion of all this 3,000-year history, starting from the Exodus from Egypt, and even before that from Abraham. And we have this amazing culture and all this stuff and all this law that's behind me that we learn that comes from Moses. Purportedly, that's what we believe. And we have this amazing house, and like there's a sewage leak in it, and it stinks, right? And then so the whoever's in charge of the plumbing sends out a bunch of people, and they're all covered in shit, right? And they go out and they say, don't tell us that we smell bad. You're not allowed to do that. You can't say that. Okay. And then instead of fixing the damn plumbing, they're going out screaming at anyone who says, oh my God, that house stinks. Okay. But you know what? It does stink. It stinks. What Israel has done to the world. And I'm not talking about Palestine and Arabs. Forget about that. That's a different issue. Okay. I'm talking about what they did with the medical stuff. And setting an example to terrorize your citizens and to segregate them, just like the Nazis did, just like they did. It didn't go that far. It didn't go that horribly, at least out in the open. They weren't sending us to gas chambers, but there were points in time in this country where in newspapers I was reading, well, why don't we just keep the unvaccinated in their houses and lock them in their houses and totally forbid them from ever going anywhere? That's fine because it's for safety. I was terrified with my wife and my kids. I was like, I have to hide now. I'm a paranoid person, but I was really a terrified man. And the fact that they led the world down this path and then other countries started following, that was Israel, the Jews doing exactly the wrong thing. And we got to deal with that. And I'm trying to clean up the mess. I'm one of the plumbers, and I'm admitting, look, the whole house is covered in shit right now, and we got to do something about it.
Is that your interpretation of why Israel moved ahead so quickly? Is because you guys are the leaders of the world? Because to be honest, from an outsider's perspective, I mean, Jew or non-Jew, you were looking at the situation as a whole and thinking this screams of Nazi Germany. And then we were watching Israel in aghast horror, going, surely we can make the comparison now. And you couldn't because you were being insensitive then. And we all have to wrestle with the fact that the Holocaust is being used as this untouchable thing. You must never compare anything to it. I'm glad that you came straight out the gate saying that, because no Jew benefits from this as a practice.
Right. Look, in my way of looking at the world, Jews are leaders of the world, whether we want to be or not. That was the deal that God made with us, that he forced us into. There are different ways you can read the story, but the rabbis say that at Sinai, and this is an exegetical read of the verses in Hebrew, that I'm not going to get into the linguistics of it, but God basically took Mount Sinai and put it over our heads and said, if you don't accept this, I'm going to drop it on your heads. You're going to die here. So did that literally happen? No, it didn't literally happen. But the point is, we're in this deal, and we are the leaders of the world, and we can either lead the world to good or we can lead the world to evil. So that is the situation that we are in. We were talking about this earlier, like Jews are overrepresented everywhere in every field. So we are the leaders, not of everything. We're bad at sports and other things, and other people are leaders in other things. Maybe Italians are leaders in cooking. I don't know, like whatever. But look, we are the leaders of the world.
I'll clear that up very quickly, because we chatted about this on email before doing this call, that there's this whole God's chosen people thing. And basically a lot of people look on that as like arrogant, who are you to say that? But the conclusion that I have come to is that the Jewish influence on world history is peculiarly large.
Yeah.
like suspiciously large. And what explanation are you gonna come up with? Now, there are different interpretations religiously. You know, a Catholic one is probably going to be different to yours, but it kind of rests on the same principle.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting how eye to eye we see there, because I don't see it as an arrogant proclamation from Jewish people. I actually see it as, well, if we observe the pattern, seems to be there.
Yeah. So look, if I mean, this comes to another verse in the Bible, right? So God compared when God said to Abraham, "You're going to have a lot of kids." He said two things. He said, "Count the stars in the sky if you can count them, and count the number of grains of sand on the beach if you can count them." So that means either we can be like the stars of the sky, or we can be as low as dirt. But either way, we're going to be there.
Well, okay, so I'll give you a bit of context with the Joseph Cohen situation. As you've said, he's someone who kind of professionally uses the Holocaust to batter whoever he can find. And the thing is, I was shocked that I came up high on his list of targets, because when it comes to this question, I don't really voice a particular opinion on Israel-Palestine, primarily because I'm just like, I consider myself British and concerned with stuff that's going on in Britain, and just like, anyone that wants to chat geopolitics, more power to them. That's not really what my brain does. It's not my area. But when it comes to Britain, there are two free speech cases which have left my jaw on the floor because of the convictions and the underreporting in the media. These are the cases of Alison Shaplow, who went to jail repeatedly for singing songs, like you can call them Holocaust denial songs, but they're basically, satirical songs. I'm not saying I like crack them on in the evening. I'm just saying, why has someone gone to jail for songs? And then the other example was a woman who made a post in a private Facebook group, or she didn't even make the post. It was like part of a comment thread in a private Facebook group that referred to a tragic incident as a Jewish sacrifice. Now, again, I don't agree with what she said, and I can see how it would be offensive to people, but she ended up in jail. And this, to me, is like, this is a huge problem. This is a huge assault on free speech. These two women should not have ended up in jail. And also, free speech is a very hot topic in the UK. Lots of people talking about Islamophobia and other things, and there's a war on free speech and Jordan Peterson and whatever. I haven't seen fair reporting on these two cases at all. So I'm very interested in them, and I follow them very closely. I talk to Alison and friends and supporters of Tara. In fact, the person that brought Tara's case to my attention is Jewish. So that is my area of interest. Because I am a vocal supporter, if you want to call it that, I don't believe they should have gone to jail. That is enough for the campaign against anti-Semitism to have basically declared me a target. And the comments under Joseph's videos are sort of unanimous in this regard. And I am flabbergasted, because that is a very mild opinion on the Jewish question, I would suggest.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, you're not going to get coverage of this on mainstream media. You're just not going to get it, because it's a third rail, right? I mean, you saw what happened to Andrew Bridgen, that member of parliament who I have massive respect for now. And I'm listening to him. I followed him on Twitter, and I even requested an interview. I don't think he's going to give me one, but I'm a real big fan of Andrew Bridgen now. He said the word Holocaust, and now he's like kicked out of parliament, or kicked out of the whip or the party, whatever it is. I don't really understand British politics so much, but look, so you're not going to. I'm going to try to explain this from I guess a Jewish religious perspective, which is how I think. But yeah, if you come back to the point where, we are chosen for the purpose of being a moral compass, that means that whatever moral part of our brain is guiding us, maybe it's a genetic thing, maybe it's a divine thing. I don't know what it is. I don't understand it. I just know that it's here. Jews are going to be looking for some kind of meaning and some kind to be a moral leader in some way. Now, if you have an atheist Jew who has no connection to the Jewish religion at all, has no connection to halacha, has no connection to praying for the temple or restoring the Commonwealth as it used to be, like in the First and Second Temple periods, and he has no ambition for that. No ambition for actually leading the world and bringing God's presence into the world. So what is his God? He's got to have something that's pushing him to do something that in his mind gives him a religion or gives him some meaning. So for many Jews, that is the Holocaust. Judaism has been hollowed out. I guess that could be a pun. Hollowed out into just this. There's a thing called Holocaust, and that is my religion, and anyone who approaches it is like the Holy Temple, and you're not a priest, and get out of here, and we're going to burn you at the stake or whatever it is. So, I mean, this has been it's been ingrained in European culture, and I don't see any way that it can get out other than some kind of conflagration or explosion where people have been so harassed by these anti-free speech laws that they really do lash out at the Jews in some scary way.
Well, okay, so this is why when that happened with Andrew Bridgen, I almost breathed a sigh of relief, because I think when Joseph and his lot come after me and Tara and Alison, that's not helping the situation for anyone, particularly Jews. I think that you can make a very good case that if I really prefer the phrase anti-Jewish bigotry. I think it makes a lot more sense than anti-Semitism. But yeah, you will increase anti-Jewish bigotry if basically this is being done in your name. If people are being persecuted really, really unfairly in the name of protecting Jews, then that's just going to stir up bad feelings towards Jews. But what happened with the Andrew Bridgen thing was there weren't any Jews involved in it. And I think that was a good thing. It was like Hancock and Sunak saying, oh, yeah, we must protect the Jewish people from these nasty words. It's like, well, what are you doing? You're treating Jewish people as like your pet that needs to be, or your little child that needs to be protected. And
they weren't treating us as a pet. They were using us. They were using us to protect themselves from the liability that they are incurring through this whole medical force campaign.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why, for me, like, it's almost a good thing, because what they said was so ridiculous. It was so offensive to anyone that understands what's going on. And we know exactly what you're trying to do. And it reveals that tactic. So I'm happy with that, because I like that stupid tactic of going, oh my God, you mentioned the Holocaust, revealed on quite a big stage. Do you know what I mean? Because he's suing Matt Hancock now. You're aware of this, right?
Wait, who's Hancock? No.
Oh, Matt Hancock is the guy that called Andrew Bridgen an anti-Semite in the House of Commons, and now Andrew Bridgen is suing him for 100,000.
Okay, well, that's good.
So hopefully that'll go well. Man, let's get deep into how it was in Israel the last few years and what you've had to put up with. Can you sum it up?
What I had to put up with. Well, look, at the very beginning of this, I gave it 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I gave it 2 weeks. I was like, okay, look, I come from, a very strong libertarian, anarchist, Rothbardian background. And I kind of broke up with government around the Ron Paul 2012 campaign. So I'm predisposed to suspecting anything the government does for the bad. So when this started, I gave it 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I thought masks were stupid. I thought this whole thing was dumb, but I put it on for about 2 weeks, and then I was like, okay, 2 weeks, that's it. I'm done with this. And then I felt like the clutches, like this fog of totalitarianism just like descending on the country. And I remember it was Purim, the holiday based on the Megillat Esther, the book of Esther. It was also about a big anti-Semite who tries to kill the entire people in the Bible, in the book of Esther. So we usually have a big party and we get drunk on that holiday. So the first lockdowns, that was February 2020, and my wife was going out to a women's party, and she never goes out to parties, but she says to me, Rafi, I think this is going to be the last party that we're going to be allowed to go to for a long time. And I want to go and I want to have a good time. I'm like, good, go for it. Go. Because I think you're right. And I felt, as the was continuing, I felt that this wasn't going to stop, until people died. And there were lies going on almost on every sphere, of all the numbers and the, I can't even, it like hurts me to try to remember this, but my kids were basically, barred from school because on certain days where they had to they had to take tests, or PCR tests. I told the school I was not going to do it because I'm not part of this. You're not going to get any inch from me. And I sent them to school without the PCR test, and the principal threatened to call the police on me. I said, look, I gave my kids to you. You're in charge of them now. If you leave them there, then I'm going to call the police on you. And I basically was like a screaming match on the phone. And eventually he gave up. He gave in. I have so many stories of like, if I didn't give them an inch, and it gave me like freedom to operate in that territory. Like, I'm the member of a gym, where I work out and I go swimming. And, when they started the green pass, I walked in with my family and I was like, and they said, look, you have to take a test if you don't have the green pass. I'm like, I'm not taking the test. I'm just walking in and going swimming. If you want to arrest me, go arrest me. So I walked in with my family into the pool, and so he's like, okay, I'm going to call the cops. So I like huddled my kids together. I'm like, I don't know if the police are going to come. I don't know. But if they do, we're going to be brave. And that's it. And then he comes to me like half an hour later. He's like, look, I don't want to call the police. I know you're a good customer, and, just don't advertise here that you didn't take a test, and we'll be cool. I'm like, okay, cool, good. And then I was able to go in there without a test. So many stories like that where I just refused to do anything, and eventually they broke. But the worst part was seeing all the rabbis, and not all the rabbis. There are some. I found some good rabbis that are not connected to the state. Basically, this is the entire state of Israel is like a monster that infects everything that its money touches, and they have this whole web of rabbis that get public checks from tax money, and they're basically paid off to like tell people that they have a religious chiyuv, a religious obligation from the Torah, because the Torah stands for saving lives, and some infantile argument like that, which I get from everybody. And so I've known these rabbis were corrupt for many, many years, but to this extent, it didn't shock me, but it just like grew heavy on my heart. And the only rabbis that dared to come out against this were ones that did not get a check from the state. That's what happened, more or less. It was
exactly the same situation with the C of E over here. I mean, I don't know if you've seen just how bad it is, but like the Archbishop of Canterbury was saying it's your responsibility to get vaccinated. Jesus would have got vaccinated. And some of our oldest cathedrals were used as vaccination centres, most likely on a Sunday, and all the rest of it, all sorts. I think they were draping NHS like banners or shawls on the altars, which is actually so much of this is blasphemous. It goes beyond like
it's exactly what the communists did when they were trying to destroy the church. Right? They want to get rid of Christianity. And look, I have my problems with Christianity, but if you're going to have me choose, not me choose, I'm not going to choose. But if you're going to tell me that there's a state of Christians or there's a state of communists that believe that the state is their god versus a Jewish guy is their god, I'd pick the Christians. Like that's much better.
Well, we are in a weird situation there, aren't we? Where suddenly everyone who has a faith finds themselves arm in arm with. I mean, I don't think there's any atheists on our side, or there's a few, but it's very, very rare that you'll meet. You certainly don't meet any smug atheists in the anti-lockdown thing, if you know what I mean by the sort of new atheist Sam Harris wing. I mean, that's the science. They believe in the science as it's fed to them. So everybody seems to have, I think people believe in faith because they've confronted the idea of good and evil. Everyone who can see for what it is has had to accept that goes beyond politics, and so therefore everyone has a faith to some degree, and some of them are attached to a long-standing religion, but everyone's disappointed by their religious body, right? Everyone. We have nowhere official to turn, and I wonder what this is going to do, because it's certainly hardened my faith. Like, I presume yours has just been basically 100% the whole way through because you're so learned on your religion. But or has it hardened your faith in the past few years?
What do you mean hardened?
Well, it's because we are actually confronted with the reality of good and evil. I find that sort of religious teaching, it matters more than it did 5 years ago. I feel like this is the only lens to view this through. If you're not talking,
this is definitely good and evil. But you have to have a sense for it. Yeah, I guess there's like some kind of a moral sense. I mean, this is what we were educated in school. I have these conversations with my wife. I'm like, were we the only ones who were paying attention? Like, you can't force people to put something in their body that they don't want. Like, what happened to human rights? What the hell is going on? And then everyone's like, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're saying. And then, but it's like, how do you explain this basic good and evil to people that don't have an automatic sense for it? I don't even know what to say to people anymore. It's so obvious.
Well, this is the key with the Holocaust, isn't it? It's like, for all that education, that didn't work as an inoculation. It should have worked.
Well, it didn't. Because the Holocaust happened. Okay. 6 million Jews were killed, maybe 5 million, maybe 7 million. I don't know what the number is. I don't, whatever. But something really, really bad happened and it wasn't stopped. Nobody stopped it. But this whole thing did happen. This whole medical tyranny happened. But it took us a while to come to terms with what was going on. But quickly we started making connections with other people, and we stopped something. It stopped, okay? And some people who did have Holocaust education, like myself, we did immediately see what was going on. Some people it took longer. I was very quick. Other people it took a few months. Maybe some people even after becoming pro. They quickly realized after you started seeing the first breakthrough cases that, maybe this is a bad, and they turned around. So we did stop it. We didn't stop. There's more to come. It's not over, but Holocaust education, at least it did accomplish something for me, because I was taught to look at these patterns, and I found them, and I started screaming to my family, who all thought I was crazy, but it stopped. I hope we were responsible for at least some of that break.
Well, when you were describing the situation, you said now it didn't get that bad, and I was just thinking back to obviously you guys were further ahead in all this, and all your restrictions were worse than ours, and there was no sign that it was stopping at any point. At that point, when we were living through it, there was no sign that this was just going to fade away at any point. So you're absolutely right to presume that it could go as far as that again and act accordingly. Has the tide turned in Israel in terms of the wider population? Because over here it feels a bit like no one wants to look at it or think about it.
That's pretty much what's happening here. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to think about it. Everyone wants to say, like, for example, like my wife was fired from her job. She was an English professor lecturer at the community college over here, and she refused to do the PCR tests, and she obviously refused. So they let her go, and then so, like, for example, like these offhanded comments, like we drop our daughter off at the preschool, and someone says, "Oh, why aren't you at Oholo at this community college anymore?" She's like, "Well, I got fired because I didn't want to submit to mandates." And she's like, well, what are you talking about? That doesn't happen. I don't know what you're saying. Like, it just denial right to the face that any of this ever happened. So nobody wants to be confronted with how they just behaved. It's sort of like these people are not really there. They weren't there before, and they weren't there during, and they're not there now. It's like so like I remember as a kid, these like feelings of when I had these like extended family brunches and all these people of like I see them and they're talking to me, but I don't feel like any of them are actually communicating. They're just like on some kind of other wavelength where they're all talking about the most superficial forms of culture and whatnot that mean nothing to me. But now that's when they have benign programming, these people, and that like they're not out to attack you. But then all of a sudden, some kind of fear virus comes into their heads from all of the media and all the plugs that they're plugged into, and they become virulent and they don't even realize what they're doing. And then you have to just kind of like hunker down and say, okay, these people are all crazy now, and I have to just hide away and find the people that can talk, that are actually conscious, that have some kind of a spirit or a soul that I can communicate with, and get together as much as we can and keep each other sane, which is what I was doing when I was fighting. I wasn't talking to these people that clearly had no consciousness of what was going on. I was trying to reach out and find anybody else who could hear me. And I found some people.
Absolutely. I went down to all of the protests when they started kicking off in 2021 because I live near enough to London that I could just do that all the time. Because what the hell else am I going to do? You know, it's crunch time and I need to find the people that get it. I was so isolated during that, the top priority. And now, like, I have a job where plenty of people there are, but by and large, I don't really get confronted with people. I'm not in circles with people that think different to me anymore. I don't really spend any of my time in conversation with them. And like, that is partially by choice, but I also think this was part of the plan, was to drive society apart. That was just a huge part of what was going on. There's so many levels to, they wanted to get a needle in everyone, but they also wanted everyone to fight. So it is a bit tragic that I don't have any contact with anyone that I could basically shake awake anymore.
Look, I understand exactly what you're saying. I have the same situation here. I've lost pretty much my entire family, not my family. My wife and my kids, thank God, were intact. But I've lost touch with my parents. I've lost my brother, my sister. I'm okay with because she didn't go out and attack me, but she's not really there. So yeah, I've lost a lot of people, but I've also gained a lot of people that I have like real respect for, and all these suspicions that I had until 2020 that a lot of people they're not here. Now you see what happens when you attack someone whose soul is not really on this planet, and it's kind of like dead. But I wouldn't look. As pessimistic as I'm sounding, I'm a very optimistic person, and it's because of my faith, because of my Judaism. I see that Holocausts like this have happened before, whether Holocaust of ideas or Holocaust of people. It's a bad word, just people going nuts, and society eating itself alive. That happens all the time, and we happen to be living through one of those periods now. We don't know where it's going to develop. But in the end, like in every good versus evil novel, movie, play, whatever, it's always the evil that consumes itself. And it's the same thing that's going to happen here. The question is, are we going to be able to protect ourselves from it? And are we going to be burned up in the fire of the self-consuming society that is quickly coming to an end? And hopefully we can build something better, which is what I hope the Jews are doing here in Israel, and why God brought us back here after so many thousands of years, because we should be here, that when all the crap is cleared out, whoever's left can build something that makes some sense.
Fascinating. So, yeah, because there seems to be a sense of inevitability at this point. I mean, I just see all of this and all of these globalist projects as essentially a Tower of Babel situation where, like, God decreed that it would be a certain way, and you're kind of spitting in his face here. It's not going to work. It's been tried before. Every single time the tower collapses and it fails, and like I came to terms with that a couple of years ago, and it does look as if our job is to get on with building stuff in our own sort of silos outside of this horrible system which is about to collapse. And the people that are still in it, still believing it, they're going to have a very horrible time when it collapses. But at least we will have already started moving on protecting ourselves. That's basically where I'm at now.
Yeah. And, I struggle with the thought, like, if the system really did collapse, I have vegetables growing in my backyard, and I have some chickens in my backyard, but like, am I really going to be able to protect myself? Probably not. And I have to rely on God protecting me and my family, and that's pretty much all I can do. So I'm a prepper in that sense, that I'm trying to do things that make sense, but I can't like dive myself into, building an arsenal of weapons or anything like that. I can't do that. I can't really learn horticulture and how to, like, hunt animals in a wilderness. I'm not going to do any of this stuff. So I just hope that whatever's left is enough to restart a society that can, rebuild itself with some consciousness.
Well, I think it's much more important to have a good network of connections and people that understand this, rather that, like, that is better than having your hut in the woods with all your foraging skills and knowing how to skin a squirrel and all that. I think just knowing a lot of people that are gonna be thinking the same way that you are, that's the way through.
Yeah, well, that's one of the advantages of the fact that, like, I still find myself constantly obsessed, not in like a terrified way that I was in 2021 or something, but every day I'm looking for more people, and you're one of them. I found you. Hello. Hi. Nice to meet you. That it's my priority to build more connections with these types of people. And when somebody says to me, Rafi, it's over. Can't you get over it and move on with life now? I say, no, I can't. Because you've changed me for the rest of my life. I'm never going to get over this. And I have to keep finding the people who understand what happens, because I know they're in the same situation. I know that they know that the acute part of this is over, but it's not over. And we have to maintain our connections and continue our society building from within society. Because when this whole thing falls, we're going to be the only ones left.
Yeah, absolutely. So off the back of the last 3 years, I am... Yeah, taxation is theft. Is that where you sit?
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Like, I think I flitted around at other ideas prior to 2020 because, the left's gone all horrible, so I guess I'm right wing now or whatever. But basically, no, the state is my enemy. The state is absolutely my enemy. And certainly looking now, I can't see how a single bit of tax money is properly spent. Half our tax money goes to the NHS, which is actively killing people. It's shortening the lifespan of the people in my country. So I hate tax. And now we're going to move on to, like, your area. When we talk about the collapse, the collapse is way overdue, isn't it? The economic collapse.
What's overdue? It's not up to any of us to decide what's overdue. There's a saying in Judaism, "Mamlich melachim velo amlucha." Like God determines who's in charge of the world, and you can't really appoint a king. It's up to God to do that. So when is this whole thing really going to fall? We don't know. All we can do is be ready for it and see the signs. But look, what my thinking is that when the dollar falls, everything falls with it. Because basically the entire power structure of all governments, we call the dollar the reserve currency. And it is in the sense that every other, well, the way I explain this is the entire economy, since now we are really in a globalized economy where all countries trade together in a globalized system. So there is a base to it. And since you cannot have a price, what keeps people from eating each other alive is a price system, right? The fact that you can wake up in the morning and know how much you have to work and how much you have to spend in order to survive the next day or whatever your goals happen to be, that keeps you from, killing your neighbor and taking his food. Because if you had no idea what you had to do or how much you had to spend or what the prices were of anything, it would be a zombie apocalypse. It would be the breakdown of the division of labor. So that price system, there's no such thing as fiat money in the sense of a government can't come up with a currency out of nothing and say, well, this costs that and that costs this, and it's all going to be in our currency, because it always has to attach itself to what was the day before. The way you understand how much work you have to do is because you wake up in the morning and you remember what it was yesterday. So everything goes back into the past, everything. And the fact that the dollar was born out of a gold substitute, that the monetary system in the United States started as silver and then it moved to gold, which itself was a theft of the middle class, because the middle class money was silver, and then they moved to gold, which is the rich people's money. So the move from a silver standard to a gold standard was a move to rob the middle class of their wealth and give it to the rich. But that's another thing. So when the reserve currency of the dollar, when that falls, there can be no return to any other currency, because every other currency is based on the dollar. So in a minor hyperinflation, like let's say in Zimbabwe or even Weimar, you can have people in that country or Venezuela going to the dollar or to the euro to function, right? And they can still have a price system based in dollars or euros. But when the dollar itself collapses, there is no other currency to go to. You have to go back to physical gold. And what I'm hoping is that we can convince people, people on our side that understand what is happening medically, that understand what's happening spiritually in the world, though they might not understand money. What the basic thing that they have to understand is that the source of all of this power, of all of it, of the tyranny, of whatever tyranny type you can imagine, the source of their power is the ability to take their money substitute that they inflate over the gold supply and give it to somebody who can then buy things with it. Whether it's their thugs, their policemen, their NHS guys, the doctors that they pay, whatever it is. Once the currency falls, everyone has to fall back on their actual talents to provide real value to people. So if we can convince our people that understand what's going on to stack physical gold and silver or whatever they can afford in a safe way, we can hollow out the rest of this corrupted monetary system and have and accelerate the fall. It's a race. We're going to win the race. The only question is how many casualties are there going to be before we win. And the faster that we can accumulate gold and silver physically in whatever vault or safe place that you can put it, wisely, don't go into debt to do this. Don't do it crazily, but percentage of your income every month. The faster we can do this, the faster we can cause that final collapse to come and freeing the world.
Awesome. I mean, I'm really, it's not just that I'm taken with this idea. I kind of know that you are right about this. It's not really a belief at this point. Pretty much from having watched things play out, I believe that we are in a war between an artificial reality and an organic reality. And a really interesting feature of that over the past few years has been crypto, because there were so many people flogging crypto in the awakened communities. And then it kind of became a meme where every Telegram group is just full of, like, I don't know, whatever the Trump shitcoin is. But I would say the majority of people who were awake to the lockdown nonsense were looking at crypto, and I was recommended it. And I met a guy who was living off his NFT sales and stuff. And I had a bit of Bitcoin for a bit and watched it grow, and then I actually spent it, and then it crashed. But the lesson for me has been, and also I take a look at gold and silver and like, what's the logic behind buying gold and silver? Well, throughout all of history, it's been stable, right? Throughout all of these things that have happened before, gold and silver seems to survive. I don't even know how. I don't have to know why that is the case. I think there's something quite magic about it, but it is the case. So yeah, I'll go with that. And then watching what's happened with crypto, no one wants to even talk about just how on the crypto train they were. They've gone silent. And I think it's because gold and silver is physical. Crypto, what was that? That was nothing, wasn't it?
So my feelings about crypto, and I've spoken about this a lot, but again I'll put it in religious terms. So look, the technology itself, I have no problem with it. It should be legal. People can buy it and sell it, whatever. It's not money. Temporarily, it is a dollar substitute, because going back to that chain where you cannot just establish prices out of nothing, you have to index it to the past. When crypto started, when Bitcoin started, how did you know what it could buy? Well, somebody started an exchange rate with dollars and said, I'll give you this many dollars for that much Bitcoin or whatever. From there, you have the first exchange. And the thing is, like, when the dollar does collapse, and it will collapse, there is a chain. It goes gold, dollar, Bitcoin. There is no such thing as a society with no exchange rate between its currency and gold being able to buy anything, right? You cannot buy anything with a currency that has no exchange rate with gold. It's impossible. Once you cannot buy any amount of physical gold with a currency, you cannot buy anything with it. So even if Bitcoin goes to $1 trillion, when the exchange rate between gold and the dollar goes to infinity, because there's no more physical gold to be exchanged for dollars, because it just doesn't work anymore, then so Bitcoin's $1 trillion. So what? Like, what can you buy with a Bitcoin if the dollar is dead? The dollar is the link between gold and Bitcoin. Now, is it possible that Bitcoin could become a gold substitute? I guess it's possible. And I guess it's worth a speculation in case that does happen. But then I would say, just like, why don't you just have a gold-backed blockchain? That's much simpler. The blockchain is fine. But now to get to the religious point, right? So the purpose of the existence of the Jewish people is to further, or to be the fulcrum point of a global war against idolatry. Now, what is idolatry? Like, what is this stupid idea where somebody says, oh, like, there's a statue of whatever, and I'm going to bow down to it, and then my crops will grow, or something? Like, is that God? Like, what the hell are they doing? It's stupid. How did this happen? Okay, so the Maimonides, he's up in the right corner there. You can't see it. So he codified all of Jewish law into 14 books. And in the first law of his laws against idolatry, he goes into this like historical development of how idolatry happened. Okay, so he says it started when this guy Enosh, who's in the book of Genesis, he had this idea. Okay, God created the stars, so the stars are God's helpers, and they're celestial bodies. They have power. You could imagine that makes sense for someone who's looking at them and says, like, shiny things in the sky, they must be magical. And he said, okay, so let's ask the stars for favors, because the stars are God's servants, and then God will do what the stars ask him, right? So it's a derivative, right? The first move in idolatry is a derivative of the ultra spiritual existence, which is God himself. The stars are a little bit more physical than that, right? And then what happens is some guy says, the stars are too far away, so let's make a form of the star and put it in this temple and make like an orb, a circle, and we'll bow down to that orb, and then the star will know that we're honoring that star, and then the star will ask God for favors, and all crops will grow. It's another derivative. It's more physical, right? And then what happens is, generations later, you have kids that are walking into these temples where people are bowing down to these statues of whatever and they don't understand the original connection to God, and they're like, oh, I guess that statue's God, and they start bowing down to it, and they lose the connection. They have no idea that there is one God in the first place. Right. So in the religious derivative chain, you start from spiritual, you go to more physical, you go to even more physical, and then you end up worshiping statues. Okay. Mm-hmm. So in the monetary sphere, it's the exact opposite. Exact opposite. You start with gold, which is very, very hard physical stuff. And then what do you move to? You move to paper. Paper is still physical, but it represents the gold. It's not exactly as hard. And then what do? You start inflating the paper, and you start making digital or data entry data about how much of supposedly physical paper dollars you have in your bank account, called deposits. And then when you do that, you issue debt over those deposits, and then you issue more deposits, and then you start pyramiding on top of that. And then what do you have on top of that? You have derivatives and options, blah, blah, blah. And then on top of all of that, you got Bitcoin. Okay, so it goes more and more and more spiritual every time you make another derivative, and it's less and less tied to what is actually there. And then eventually this whole thing collapses, and all the value that people thought they had they don't have, so idolatry is really the crossing of the physical and the spiritual realms in ways that are not kosher. You should not be doing it. Okay. There's a spiritual realm and there's a physical realm. And we as human beings, we're both physical and spiritual beings. And we always struggle with that, with trying to keep those in balance and trying to figure out where is the point we're supposed to be hammering away at or existing in. We don't know. And that causes the torture in our souls. So the advice is don't cross them. Bitcoin is not money. It's a derivative of a derivative of derivative. The money is gold. Go for that. And if you want to speculate on Bitcoin, do it, but don't accumulate it as if you think you're going to outsmart the totalitarians by doing that. Just look at Sam Bankman-Fried. I mean, just give me a break.
I think the kicker with Bitcoin is like I can't use it for anything. So you can talk to me all day about how it's on a blockchain and non-fungible tokens and it's got I forget the terms. I can't even be bothered to remember them anymore. But basically, if I've got some Bitcoin on my phone, whatever that means, can I get anything with it? No, you can't use it anywhere. And if we're at this point in the collapse where people are like, no, get your Bitcoin, it's still unusable. But also what you said about like idolatry as a whole, I mean, that touches everything now, whether it's like woke capitalism, people loving their Nike shoes and then Nike telling them that Black Lives Matter, or what's happened with the NHS in our country. Did you know about the clapping and all of this? We had religious ceremonies for our state healthcare provider.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Every Thursday during the first few weeks, and as we went into lockdown, everyone was expected to go on their front doorstep and clap at 8 p.m. for hospitals.
What is this, North Korea?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And Nigel Farage did that, and he's supposed to be our sort of he's our Trump figure, right? And he was
Nigel Farage clapped for the NHS.
He did. He banged a pan. It was sickening. But no, you said earlier that you're an optimist, and I'm an optimist because it felt so dark 2 years ago. Because this was just getting worse and worse and worse, and I don't see that. I see a lot of horror that needs dealing with, but as you said, I think the acute bit is gone, and no matter what happens, like, we will have found each other, so you'll never end up that isolated again. I say it very seriously, like, they can't make me as lonely as I was at the end of 2020 ever again, no matter what they do. And I think that we are all in that position.
I hope so. I mean, I could imagine things that they would do. They could put me in solitary confinement, or I'm not worth it to them, so they're not going to do that to me. But yeah, look, we found each other. It's very encouraging, and I just hope I can do my job over here. I'm not exactly sure what it is, and you do your job over there, and I'll meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, no, I think we just keep chatting, keep having conversations, keep putting the truth out as much as we can, because that's all it is, isn't it? It's the rising of truth, as far as I can see. There's people have been speaking out and revealing stuff about all sorts since the start of 2020. It's not just related to COVID and that. There's just, I mean, fitting into your religious framework, is that what you believe is happening? Some kind of like awakening or a revelation or the apocalypse? Where do you think we are?
I don't know. Look, I have my thoughts that keep me going. Do I know that they're right? I don't know that they're right. But look, I see history from a Jewish perspective. Like, I believe that we are the people of the Bible, and that God told us that He would never kill us all, and we would always have a remnant. And then at some point He would bring us back to our land, which it seems that He did. And I don't think the state of Israel per se is part of that. I think that's just, a corruption. But most Jews in the world are now in Israel. And I think that has historic implications for the entire Western world. And I think the fact that this is happening for the first time since the First Temple period, not even in the Roman period where most Jews in the world in Israel. This is the first time since, I think, the time of Solomon. Before the northern kingdom split off, the 10 tribes split off from Judah, which is why we're Jews, because we're the only tribe left. it's the first time since then. And the fact that Western civilization appears to be in its death throes at this specific time, I don't think is a coincidence. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm making it up. But I'm here and I'm awake, and I hope I'm in the right place.
So just before we go, just to check, as a non-Jew, am I allowed to be interested in the Jewish influence in world history and all that, or that doesn't make me a bad person who needs to be sent to jail?
No, probably death sentence would be more appropriate.
It's been awesome to chat today, man. Thanks for this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Sweet.
Tim Watley was one of my students, and if this wasn't my son's wedding day, I'd knock your teeth out, you anti-dentite bastard.
Oh, I said something about dentists and it got blown all out of proportion.
You know, the Nazis had pieces of flair, but they made the Jews wear 'em.
What?
And go!